Hello, everybody out there, and who may be watching a little bit later after this is done. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. GEG Nagoya presents YouTube Live 2020. This is episode 5. We're talking about Google Forms. We're going to look at a bunch of activities and those activities that can help you collect data. And we'll show you like a how to use Google Forms kind of thing. We'll do that more towards the end because we're going to give you a very quick, brief overview at the beginning. We don't want to start straight with a tutorial because we want to get more into like, hey, here's some ideas that you can use for this. I'm flying solo today, so I've got my second device open up here. So feel free to throw questions and comments in the chat. I will probably not type a response, but I will orally give you a response. And then hopefully be able to go back later and answer some questions. But as usual with these online events, we're going to start with a little bit of Google Educator Group propaganda for you. First is our next episode. We're going to look a little bit more at Google Sheets, but also the data that you can get from a Google form, which automatically goes into a Google Sheet. We'll show you some things that you can do to work with data and that kind of thing. But that'll be June 3rd, Wednesday, and same time, 8 p.m. Japan Standard Time. So again, we are GEG Nagoya. You can find us at gegnagoya.com. We've been around for a couple of years, but little by little, we're trying to grow our community. So if you have an interest, please send us an email, or you can find us on Facebook or find us tweeting. We would love to get more people involved, more people presenting, even being a guest on one of these episodes or some other random episode, for example. And definitely get more people involved, right? And if you're a Japanese educator watching, please get in touch too, because we'd like to be including more Japanese content in what we do. Just very quickly, Google Educator Groups are spread out over the country now. We have probably around 30, so this is a little bit out of date, this map. But what are Google Educator Groups? We are a technology-focused group of volunteers. We are not paid by Google, just to get that out there, but we are passionate teachers that like to use technology in the classroom, but technology to enhance learning, technology that helps students learn and grow and that kind of thing. So the student comes before the technology. We are collaborative groups. We try as much as possible to work with people within our GEG when time permits, and with other Google Educator groups around the world, and especially the Asia Pacific region. We have a range of different kinds of events, like these YouTube Live events that we're doing. We are going to launch a Google Educator Group, a Google Certified Educator Study Group very soon. So keep your eyes out for that. If you would like to get certified by Google, we are here to help you. Unconferences such as EdCamp Nagoya, we would like to try lesson plan jams and try it on Monday. We do have regular pub nights. The COVID-19 pandemic has put a halt to that for the time being. And we're looking into doing student events as well. You can also have a look for GEG Asia Pacific Connect. If you go to sites.google.com/view/GEG Asia, or simply Google it, you'll find links to Google Educator Groups around the Asia Pacific region and all the cool stuff that they are doing. Here in Nagoya, we tend to partner with ETJ, the English Teachers of Japan Aichi branch, and EdCamp Nagoya. We launched our first event last November, and we would definitely like to do that again, probably partnering with EdCamp Kansai soon and doing an online version. And again, we have a Google Certified Educator Level 1 study group coming down the road, so please stay tuned for that. Today, this is what we're going to do. We're going to jump into it in just a moment. We're going to look at classroom uses for Google Forms after we give you a little brief overview of what Google Forms looks like. We're going to talk about best practices as we do that, and we're going to look at some activities. These are just examples like choose your own adventure, provocations for the start of class, skill building activities, and exit tickets, as well as checking into student attitudes to learning, your own teacher attitudes to learning, and a whole range of other things. So the majority of this is actually going to be showing you a range of different ideas, and the ideas are limitless. You're only limited to your imagination. And then after that, I'll draw your attention to a slides deck that we're going to use, where or we're not going to use, you can use, that teaches you how to create Google Forms. It's got animations in that. Before we really get to it, let me just say kampai, and feel free to grab a drink, a glass of wine, some water, kind of sit back. We'll try not to go too rapid fire, but if I'm going a little bit quickly for you, type something in the chat box. Got my device right here. I'll be able to slow down. So without further ado, let me get a copy of this slide deck to you so that you can kind of follow along and try out some of the forms that are in this. Got an itchy bridge in my nose here. I don't know what's going on. But I do have better light than usual, which is kind of nice. So I'm going to start by just telling you a little bit about myself. I do keep a blog from time to time. It's called Learning Light Bulbs. You can go to learninglightbulbs.com and have a look at my educational musings. But this session is more about Google Forms in the classroom, right? Just a bit about me. I teach at Nagoya International School. I am an individuals and societies and DP history teacher, but I do technology consulting on the side. I am what's referred to as a Google for Education trainer, but I also have acted as an innovator coach. I'm a GEG leader for Nagoya, and I'm a Google Education, Earth Education expert. And I've done YouTube certifications and things like that. So you'll be hearing a lot from me if you haven't up until now. Online, just about a whole bunch of cool stuff using Google and other online tools. If you want to get me at Twitter, I'm at Nathan Gildart. You can get us at gegnagoya.com as well. And I'm posting videos with a lot of these tools on socialstudiessamurai.com. So have a look if there's something you like, and maybe you can give me an idea to put a new video up. So what I'd like to do right now is just do a very, very quick overview of Google Forms. So I'm going to escape here, and I'm going to jump into my drive. And so to begin with, Google Forms, for the beginners, how do you access Google Forms? Okay, well, the first thing that you would do is go into your Gmail, and up here, you see your apps launcher. Now, this is one way to get to Google Forms. You could go to your apps launcher and then choose the Drive icon, because that's where Google Forms is kept. And up here where you see your plus button, where it says New, you're just going to tap on that. And it's not going to appear in the list they give you. Let that load. You have to go down to More. You have to go to Google Forms, and you can choose From a Template. So I'm going to tap on From a Template because I would like to show you the template gallery. Before I do move on, though, I want to show you one other way you can access Google Forms, which is quicker. If you are logged into your account already, you can just go up to this box, which is called the Omni box, and type in forms.google.com. And if you tap on that, it's going to bring you straight to the Google Forms page that we have just accessed over here. So I'm going to close that. I'm going to come back here. And so you can see here, if I want, I can create a blank Google form. But if I want to get an idea of things for like work or for education, then I can actually just go down and choose one of the templates that they have. The template gallery is growing, so I encourage you to have a look. I'm going to choose a blank document. So again, there's different ways to create the Google form, and those are a couple of them. And I've got expat news fees right now. Finally figured out the chat. Looking forward to this. Hey, thanks a lot. Please, expat new fees. Wait, we were chatting last week, weren't we? Go ahead and throw in your questions and your comments. So very quickly, whenever you get a Google form, you're going to have to put in a title, and it's automatically going to go to a multiple choice question. And then up here where it says Untitled Form, you can tap that, and it automatically gives the same title here. You can always go back and change any of this stuff by tapping in. And I will point out that you have a place to put a form description. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of the different questions and things, but just to point out, there are different question styles that you can use. You would add questions with the plus button, and then you're going to see in the examples today a range of these different kinds of question styles, okay? I will point out that you can add titles to kind of break up your forms a little bit. You can add questions that are imported from Google Docs and other places. You can add images. You can also add videos, and you can add sections. And what that means is the person taking the quiz or the form or the survey, they move on from one section to another based on what you give them. Now, again, that's not the point of today's lesson, so we're not, or session, but we're not going to do that. Now, right now, it's kind of more of a best practices kind of thing. When you create your form, I do encourage you to go up here to your customized theme palette. It's a button, but it's a palette. And I recommend that you change the font styles to whatever you like. It's, again, very limited. You only have a small number of colors and things like that you can choose from. And you can choose images as well. You can upload, you can choose your photos, or you can choose the images that they have in Google for you. So just for the sake of what we're doing here, let's go with work and school. Let me go down to, yeah, let's go with a coffee because I am a coffee addict. And I'm going to insert that. The reason I encourage this is that forms look, nicer when you've got some kind of images in there. And just to note, you can change the color scheme a little bit if you choose. Now, another thing is the preview button. After you've made something, you always want to tap the preview button and then just do a test and submit it yourself and see how that looks. Now, the real magic, okay, we're going to start with here is the More button. If you click More, let's say you've made a form and you want a copy of it for separate classes. If you would like to do that, some people choose to have different forms for different classes. I always just put a question that says, please select your class, class A or class B kind of thing. But here is where you can add collaborators, right? So if you tap on that, what happens is you add other teachers, you invite people in, and then they can modify, edit, and collaborate on the doc with you as well. It's pretty straightforward in that sense. One other thing I'll point you to is the preferences right down there. Okay, so if you tap on your preferences, you can set your defaults so that you automatically correct email addresses. If you want students to answer all the questions, or if you want a default quiz point value. I never change these, but I do set the default quiz point value to 0 so I can be deliberate about making a quiz worth points or not. I always keep it at 0 because I usually use quizzes for formative assessment, not summative. I don't want to use it for grades all the time. Mostly it's with no point value, but I want to give feedback. And you can't give feedback in a quiz without the quiz feature. So I always keep that at 0. Hope I'm not going too quick. All right. Hey, Richard, great to see you. Well, if your school's just starting to use Google Classroom, Richard, then you're in luck because Classroom is just a brilliant tool. And Google Forms you can actually create directly in Google Classroom, or you can actually import a form that you've already created into Google Classroom. So it's quite nice in that way. So now the next thing, and again, this is a best practices deal right here, is the gear wheel, right? In Google Tools, you see the gear wheel. That means there are some settings in there, whether it's in Mail, like Gmail, or whether it's in Forms or whatever, right? Now, one thing that I recommend is if you're using it for school, collect your student email addresses. That way, you know that you can respond to somebody if if you need their email addresses, and you can also double check and see who's done the form. So you collect that, and you collect response receipts. Now, what is a response receipt? A response receipt is an automatic email that goes to the person that's filling out the quiz or the form or whatever. Now, you can choose that they get it if they want it. My recommendation as a best practice is to always email your students. Okay, and so, yeah, the question there, is it better to collect emails? I personally feel it's best to collect email, though I always put a question in my quizzes that says, please choose your name from a drop-down menu, or please type your name. Now, I already have my student names in a spreadsheet, so what I do is usually open that, I copy all the names, I paste them into a drop-down menu question near the top. And that means I get their email address, but I also get their name. And that's just I guess, a bit of a backup, right? So I can see who's filled out the form, what were their answers, and it'll have their email when we look at their responses as well. So I recommend that you collect email addresses and always give them a response receipt. Now, what does that mean? It means they will automatically get an email to their account that they filled out the form with. And why is that useful? Because for the quizzes feature, what you can do is give them feedback. And I'll show you later one sample where you give feedback for feedback in a form in the version of quizzes, and then they get an email with all their responses. And that means they can go back and check what they didn't get at any point in time throughout a unit or whatever you're teaching. Or if it is a final quiz and you're grading it, then they'll get their responses, and then you've got something to go back to as well. They have it in their email, you have it in your Google Sheet and your Google form. Limiting it to one response, it depends. If you only want them to respond one time, but allow them to edit, then you would check these boxes. If you want to see a summary of all the other responses, then they're going to be able to compare themselves to other people. I personally feel that's not the healthiest thing, so I never check that box, to be honest with you. If I limit it to one response, I usually allow them to edit later. Now, the next tab. We're almost done here, and then we're going to jump into some examples. And just double checking here on the comments. So in the presentation, this actually means what they see as they go through the quiz, right? So if you have a long quiz that's about maybe 15 questions or something, you might want to check off the progress bar, because then they can see the light at the end of the tunnel. You can see that they can see that, okay, I'm almost finished. Of course, in some cases, that makes people feel rushed, right? You can shuffle the question order. I think that's better if you're doing a quiz and you're doing it in class. That way, there's that little temptation to kind of look over, what'd you get? So if you shuffle the order, that means they're getting, questions at different times and rates, paces. And then Google has this automatic, your response has been recorded, which is, nice of them to do, but it's a little bit unfeeling, right? So you could say, thank you. Remember to check your responses, kind of thing. And then you click save. You remember, you always, look at that. I can spell, I just can't type. Now, the last thing to point out when you're setting up is a quiz. Is this going to be a quiz, or is it just going to be a survey or a poll or something, right? If it's a quiz, you definitely should be collecting their email addresses. But what you have to do is go over here to this slider where it says, make this a quiz. So you tap on it, and then now it is a quiz, and you'll be able to add point values to all the questions, and you'll be able to add feedback. We'll show you how that looks later. So quiz options, at the end of the quiz, when they submit, they can, you'll see that they have a button that says view score. So their score doesn't automatically come up. It says view score, and they tap on that, and then they can look at it in a new window. However, remember, if you've assigned the automatic response receipts, then they're going to get an email with it as well. So if they don't view it then, they can definitely view later. Or you can say, nope, I don't want you to view it now. They will send on or check their email to see it. And I recommend that you add missed questions, correct answers, and point values and things like that. That way they can kind of see how they've done. So I'm not going to make this form a quiz, because this isn't actually a form we're going to use. So I'm just going to cancel all this stuff, but that's basically an overview. The last thing I'm going to show you, so I close one of my tabs. I get too many tabs open, my computer goes slow. With my 3 dots up here, and again with Google Apps, 3 dots and gear wheels are your friends. This is where I can just trash it. I could also drag it and drop it in Google Drive, or I can just click move to trash, and then I'm going to click go to Forms home screen, and then it's just going to take me back to the Google Forms home screen. Okay, so that is a very quick crash course on how you put together a Google form, whether it's a quiz or not. I am, just to let you know, my website, socialstudiessamurai.com. Over the weekend, going to be creating a new how to make a Google Forms quiz. I'm also going to share later with you in the chat um, a link to a Google form that I've used that teaches you how to create a Google form and add feedback. Let's see. So now I'm going to come back to this slide deck. Okay. So we've had a look at the Google Forms overview from the builder view. Now, what I like to do is give you some, well, not some, a whole bunch of examples of how you might want to think about using Google Forms in the class. Now, I've broken these down into, different topics, and over time I will be changing this slide deck and moving it around. So be aware it'll change, and topics do overlap, right? So here's one example. Why don't you find out what students want to learn? So I'm going to click on the link here, topic survey, and it's going to take me to the form. And basically, this is something from the beginning of the year. I give this to students and say, hey, what topics are you most excited to learn about? And they can choose two they're most excited. Oh, I don't know much about the UN. I want to do that. And I'm kind of curious about current events. What I'm not that excited about is forms of government and intergovernmental organizations. Not really sure. What 3 skills do I need most development on? Oh, I got to get better at my persuasive writing. I'm not good at forming an opinion. And sometimes I don't understand that text. And then I add, hey, any other comments? Well, I think I'm pretty good at persuasive writing, but I'm not really convinced yet. And of course, they click submit. And then you, the teacher, you get some of their voice. And now, why is this important? You can get a sense of how students feel about their skill sets. You can get a sense about what they're excited to learn about. And then you can get a sense of what they are probably not excited about. And what this says to me is, okay, they're not keen on forms of government or intergovernmental organizations. So I really got to focus on making those units not necessarily exciting, but engaging, right? So that students, when they, if they were to fill this form out again, they'd say, yeah, I kind of like learning about forms of government, anarchy, and military juntas and all that kind of stuff. Why democracy is flawed. No offense. So I'm going to leave this here. That's one example. So tap in here, go to my next one. So another one that you might want to think about giving at the beginning of your year, and again halfway through your school year, is their attitudes to learning. What do they think are their learning habits? And so, for example, you open this up. Oh, I didn't give you the view I wanted you, but that's okay. I'll fix that a little bit later. Just give me a moment for that to load. So this is a learning process questionnaire, right? So note here, I've asked them to check their class A or class B. I didn't collect their email addresses for this because I want it to be anonymous. I want to get an overall conversation of the class attitudes. This is based on some work by John Hattie. You'll see him come up a few other times. And basically, I don't always give 5-point rubrics, but I think in this case, having a middle ground, it might be useful. Now, this is rather long, which is why the statements I've tried to make a little bit short and keeping everything the same. This is never or rarely true of me. It's always or almost always true of me. And it's the same throughout the whole thing. So students really just fill out their attitudes, what they think. And then what you can do is when you go back to the responses, let me close that. I'm going to come back here. I hope I'm not going too fast. Please let me know. When I click on my responses, what's going to happen? Now, I don't have any responses in here because this is my demo version, but you're going to get a summary of all the different responses. I'll show you what that kind of looks like in a moment with another example. But you also get a spreadsheet with all their responses. But what this does is, especially with a survey that's got a scale, a linear scale, numbers, you can look at the bar graphs and the pie graphs that are made without seeing anybody's names and say, hey, look, I noticed everybody here, they have said that they tend not to review until the night before a test. Well, let's talk about that. And then you can talk about skills like, well, why is it important to review in small chunks and not cram the night before? Why are you going to remember more if you review regularly than just do it the night before? Okay, and so moving right along. Now here's another one on motivation, right? So we've got a school version and a classroom version. And again, this is based on John Hattie. And I hope this content is useful. I know we're not exactly in the classroom yet, but this is one that John Hattie has for teachers, right? To what extent are teachers developing skill, will, and thrill in the school, right? And again, it's just another teacher survey, but it gives you feedback on teachers' attitudes towards teaching, right? Now, this would be more for probably an administrator or middle management. I'm a head of department, or we call it department leader of learning. Just to get the attitudes of your people, so to speak. But here's one that you might want to do yourself, right? So this is pretty much the similar one with some different, context. But you can fill out and look at your own responses about how are you establishing, and I like this, to what extent are you developing skill, will, and thrill in your classroom? Sometimes I think it's good to look at a Google form or your own survey and just kind of reflect on your own responses every once in a while to think about, what am I doing? Do I do this all the time and every year? Full disclosure, no. But it is a habit I would like to get into. And I really liked this survey when I was, studying John Hattie, whom I've actually met. Really smart dude from New Zealand, I believe. So another thing, how about your students in the class climate, right? How do they feel? Again, really important for student voice, right? This is a class climate survey I've taken from a mix of different sources that I put together, but you'll notice it's anonymous and I haven't collected names. And what I want to do is find out what are kids or students thinking about, the environment in the class, right? So the expectations are clear most of the time. If I have a lot of students that say they disagree, then I think, okay, maybe I tend to talk quickly, even in my classes. So I know I have to slow down. Activity instructions are clear most of the time. The assignments are relevant to the material we're studying. If I'm getting into the agree, strongly disagree range, then things are okay. But if I see something that there's a lot of people that disagree with, like students' ideas are listened to, I got to think to myself, oh my goodness, maybe I have to give my students a little more voice. Or maybe I am too strict. Or maybe I'm not strict enough and they're walking all over me. I really think class climate surveys are good to do. And hey, why not every 6 months or so, maybe twice a year? Give them about 2 months to get used to you. Give it to them, and then go back and do it again, like maybe around April, just so you know how to end up, wind the year down on a positive note. Course evaluations. Now, I'm pulling this one up. We all know what a course evaluation is. I pulled this up because it's a Google generated one. So this is from that Google template gallery under the education stream, so to speak. So the nice thing is you've already got it made for you. You've got some generic headings for you. All you have to do is click the edit button and go in and change whatever you want. So you already have a course evaluation made, and then you can modify it to your own needs. You might want to change the wording and things like that. I try to use positive wording, like I don't like word poor, kind of thing myself. And again, that's student voice, right? So now let's look at a couple of provocations and polls, okay? And these are activities that I think are fun. I use a range of tools, not just Google Forms for activities and polls, but I do think they're quite useful. So how about an opinion poll? What do students think? Here's a very basic one I used. So for example, you create a poll, keep it simple. I would actually put a statement about why you feel this way underneath. I should have put that under. But have your simple provocation. Don't collect names. Don't collect emails. Make sure your questions are required and comments. And then they choose. Do they strongly agree, strongly disagree? There's no middle ground for this one because you want students to choose a corner, right? I use this for Four Corners debates as well. So do you strongly agree or disagree? And then you get their feedback, and you will also get an honest pie chart in the responses that says, whoa, half of you agree and half of you strongly disagree. What is with that? And then you can use that to drive discussion. And when things get quiet, you can go back to their comments here by looking at your spreadsheet. Love that stuff. And again, that is student voice. Now, did I go polls? Okay. I had another one that I'm going to show you later. I've got a mixed up slide deck here. I'm always working on it. Sorry, everyone. Exit tickets. I do once in a while get questions, what is an exit ticket? This one is also from the Google template gallery. I've got a range of them in my other school account, but basically an exit ticket is what student writes at the end of a class, right? Or at the end of an activity. I like to find out what they think about activities and classes and that kind of thing. So I often give exit tickets. These are meant to be really short and really quick. You may or may not want to collect their names and emails, but what's one important thing you learned in class today? Do you feel prepared? Did you feel you were ready? How can you make this lesson or help me make the lesson better, right? So you get what they learned, how they felt about their time or their readiness, preparedness for the class, and then what suggestion to make it better. Well, today was kind of boring, Mr. Gildart, so I didn't like that activity. And if a lot of students say that, then we'll maybe want to rethink about fixing that activity if I even do it again. And again, you can make whatever exit ticket you want. I kind of like this graphic, so I went with that. And then you can modify this your own way, change the text and that kind of thing. So let's look at quizzes. Now this is a big one. So if you're thinking like maybe it's time for me to go, stick around for a moment. Now this is the one thing that I think Google Forms are really good for, and I want to emphasize that quizzes don't have to be for points. Something I like to do is use Google Forms quiz feature. So remember, you have to go into the settings and slide that slider over to make this a quiz. What I like to do is make the pre-unit formative quizzes worth 0 points, okay? And if it's worth no points, then that forces the students to look at the feedback, and they don't look at the, they don't necessarily look at the numbers, right? The grades. And you can give feedback. So let me quickly fill out this form and show you what it looks like. Okay, so just going to throw in some quick text here with my names. Just going to quickly throw in some responses. All right, this one says check 3. Let me just, and again, just going to randomly give some answers here. And so I filled out the form. Of course, students would take their time, and you can fill this form out yourself if you'd like to. And then they get the submit button down here. Remember, they also always have to hit submit. Let me point something out too, actually. I always put Creative Commons attributions with my my images. I have not been consistent with that up until fairly recently, I would say. I'm teaching for 23 years. I should have been doing it 23 years ago. Let's see. Yeah, and I got the expat Newfie. Yep. Definitely useful. Exit tickets are great for a big class. And I think the pre-unit formative assessment too is good. Can you give feedback for both right and wrong answers? Yes, Richard, you can give feedback for right and wrong answers, and you're going to see how that looks to the student right now. I'm going to click submit. And so now I've got view score. And so you'll notice here that my total points, it says 0 up in the red here. 0 out of 0 because I gave no points. And as I go down and I'm looking at the responses, in the green, or where anything that's green, it's got a check mark. It says, yes, that's correct. Now you'll notice the feedback that I gave. It says here, that's correct. And the way I do this, and I'll post a how-to video with you in a moment, actually. I've got this in my other website. This feedback right here, what I've done is literally for correct and incorrect answers, I've pasted the exact same feedback. The only thing I change is that's correct or no, not quite. The nice thing too is in the feedback, you can link a YouTube video or an external website so that they can go and see a little bit more or seek responses or answers a little bit more just to help build their learning, So if they got it wrong, especially, and you give them a short 2-minute video, then that gives them the answer. Now, I'll show you how that is built in a moment. Now, if you go down, you notice here, question 2, I got incorrect. Now, the correct responses are, um, 3 different things right here. It's not, I checked off getting outside quickly. That's incorrect. I got 2 of them right, but I got 1 of them wrong. But that's okay because this isn't worth points. Can I fix that later? Yes, you can in your spreadsheet. And here's the feedback. Not quite. Running outside immediately can be dangerous due to. So basically, if they got the question correct, they would still get the same feedback. But here, not quite would actually say, that's correct. And so I scroll down and I see my feedback. And this is the feedback that students will get in their email as well. Okay. Now, I didn't set email for this one because this is my demo version right here. Okay. But it's pretty nice because they get immediate feedback. And if it's at the beginning of a unit, then they can say, okay, I know epicenter and hypocenter. I'm not really sure about the volcanic process. I better learn that. Or, I better focus on that when we learn it. Myself as a teacher, let's say they make mistakes on, let's go back to the volcanic process. Let's say most of the students get this one wrong or incorrect. I say, okay, I'm going to spend extra time on that, or I'm going to go extra slow. Pre-formative assessment, please do it. I think Google Forms are great for it. And again, you get that in a spreadsheet, and they get email responses if you choose. So what does a quiz look like when they get their points? Same quiz. I recommend you use this same quiz at the end of a unit before they write a test. I never use Google Forms quiz feature for actual summative assessment myself, but I do like to go back and give them a quiz. And what happens is, now I give them a quiz before we actually do any kind of test, right? So that means they can do the quiz, they can see the grade, and then they can go, okay, I haven't actually learned that. Before I write the unit test, I better get on top of it. And you notice here, it's got point values now. So same thing, I'm just gonna throw a couple things in, and I'm gonna put my section, and I'm gonna put my responses, just so you can, and let's see. And they go down here. And so now I'm going to submit my form, view my score. And I got 8 out of 10. Okay. Wow, that means I did fairly well. Let's go and look back. Hey, why don't I check that email I did a month ago when I did this exact quiz a month ago? Okay, I've learned about some of these things. What is it that, okay, the boundaries. Okay, I don't have my my boundaries down. I better double check that. Let's see. Still don't have the volcanic process down. Yeah, I better do that. I better focus on that. I absolutely love using a Google Form quiz for pre-unit assessment and formatively, and then for a little bit of practice before a test. Now I'm going to check the questions here. Can we add audio into the questions for listening activities? The audio you can't. You can add files, but in a Google form, let me just go in and kind of show you how that looks. Let me start a blank form. Now, they do have this file feature. Okay, so I'm jumping around here to answer some questions, folks. So if I choose to add a file, I have to choose this file upload. And if I tap on that, click continue, wait for it to load. And so now you can choose allow only specific file types. Now here's the thing, if you click on that, it gives you a range of the different files and it says audio. Now remember, keep in mind, you can only upload, I believe, an MP3 file. I have literally 2 weeks ago had somebody ask me that exact same question. So if you want them to record on their phone and then upload to a Google form from their phone, make sure that they have an app that allows them to record in MP3 format. Otherwise, they can upload other file formats, but you have to activate it. And of course, it's a question. And I'm going to show you an activity I do with photos actually shortly. So upload your, let's just say, photo here, or your audio response. Just use Grammarly there for a minute. Now, the maximum file size, keep this low because you can only get 1 GB of files within one form. Now, what happens is this will automatically create a folder next to your Google form where all those files will go. Okay, so just to recap, you have to set to allow specific file types if you want, or just leave it open. How many files are they allowed to upload? 5 or 10? It depends on your activity. And again, keep in mind, you've got 1 GB of files, so the maximum file size, you want to keep it short. File size low. I recommend 10 megabytes. That way you can get audio, video, and images. Now, video, you probably don't want them uploading. Okay, so let me just check out some of the questions here. Hopefully that worked, or that answered the question. Why don't you use Google Forms quizzes for summative assessment? The only reason I don't use Google Forms quizzes for summative assessment is that, honestly, I teach at an international baccalaureate school. I find Forms doesn't work for my diploma program classes and the type of assessments that we give, because the Forms quizzes they don't help with how the exam they're going to write after 2 years is done. I think Forms quizzes are good for things like vocabulary and stuff like that. I'm sure you just monitor in the classroom. For the middle years program, Forms are good for vocabulary for students to kind of see their grades. That's a pedagogical thing. I don't criticize anybody that actually use Forms quizzes for summative assessments. I mean, if I had 150 students, trust me, I would be using Google Forms quizzes for assessment. Probably things like vocabulary or understanding concepts. But generally I don't. And in the MYP, the middle years program that I teach, we do a lot of project-based learning. So I tend not to use so much for summative, but definitely for formative. But that's up to you, and it depends on every teacher's context. I think Forms quizzes are really good for summative assessment. I just don't use them. Hopefully that answered the question, though. Trust me, if you use Forms for summative assessment, I think that's completely fine. Let's see. Okay, great, Glenn. Hope that audio bit helped you out. I'm just going to trash this right here just to keep my drive a little bit clearer. All right, so let's see a few other ideas here. All right, so research skills. Here's one that I think is kind of fun. Students, this is a fun activity, but it focuses just on keywords. So as an example, you can set a Google Forms quiz in such a way that students have to find the exact right response. So let me show you how this looks here. So I'm just going to put my name in there, write my name is name. I click next. Now note that I've set this up in sections, right? And I actually have a video that teaches you how to do this. Again, I'll link it in just a moment when I'm finished this one. So they click next, and then they get their first topic. Halloween history. What was the name of the ancient festival celebrated by the Druids? I don't think that they're going to know what Samhain is, let alone how to spell it. So then they would do a Google search activity where they start looking for, they use keywords like Druid festival, and see, that doesn't really tell me much. Or if I go down and see, hey, wait a minute, I've seen that word Samhain. I've seen the word Samhain somewhere else. Anyway, you get the idea. So what they might do then is, just to get the correct spelling, they've used the right keywords to find the answer. And when they type it in, let's say I click next. Ooh, I spelled it wrong. And I have my auto-generated response. Whoopsie. So I take that out. I'm going to click next. And oh, wait, I just had the spelling wrong. I have it. And so what they first see is more information about Samhain. And then they have a nice image with the image source there. It wasn't Creative Commons, but it is public for us to use. So, and then what do people fear on the night of Samhain? One word, plural. And just to quickly show you, ghosts. I got it right. So it takes me to the next one. Then I read my next question. Specific group of Celtic people who wore costumes in order to confuse ghost demons. Da 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 da. I go and do my Google search, and then I think I have the answer, and I type it in. I hit next. Oh, it didn't work. Well, I have help text here called one word capitalized, because this is a specific response, right? So one word capitalized. Let's see if that works. Ooh, Druids works. All right, that's it. And then I can keep going and going and going. And then again, you can get the feedback in the Google form, but really it's more of a kind of an activity. My students really enjoy that. I'm a social studies and a history teacher, so that kind of works for me. And again, a little bit of practice using keywords when they use Google, because I find young people don't really know how to use Google so well, right? Okay, so how about rubrics? Peer assessment, self-assessment, or you as the teacher. Let's say you've got your students doing an oral presentation. I tend to record my presentations and then go back and look at them just because I feel I can't really get everything just in one go. But you don't have to do that, of course. But what you might want to think about is record on the video, with an iPad or something, or your smartphone, and fill out the rubric as you do it. That way you've already got a rubric in case something goes wrong with the video. I honestly never do that, and it's just because I don't have the habit, but I should do that. It's a good idea. I don't actually like writing notes while students are presenting because I do think it makes them nervous. But again, that's a pedagogical thing. Pedagogical thing. Can't speak. So as an example, you would require maybe their name in a drop-down menu. Like if this was a peer assessment, then the students would choose the student name, and you might have a little bit more detail in these radio buttons. These are called radio buttons. And so let's say a student finishes an oral presentation. Well, then the students can go and then they can do a very quick, simple, above and beyond. It was satisfactory, limited, needs much improvement. Again, I threw this together quickly just as this is a demo, but I try to be careful with my wording. It's like keep working on it, that kind of thing. Keep it in the positive. Now, what you could do too is have a little bit more text in here. The pace was a little too fast, a little too slow, or just right. That you can decide how long you want this to be. Remember, the more text you put in, the longer it's going to be. And I also suggest that you get a narrative comment. Why did you give the grade that you gave to the student? And then, of course, if you have a class of 20, 25 people, then you get all of that feedback in a bar graph if it's buttons, right? So then you can quickly get an eye for what the general audience thought about the presentation. And again, there's different kinds of rubrics. If you're in this call, or watching this video, you're probably a teacher and have lots of ideas for that. So let's think of some other activities as we start to wind things down. If you're still here, you're doing like super great, folks. Before I do that, though, let me just quickly pull up a video that teaches you how to make that Google Forms quiz that I showed you a moment ago. Just bear with me. I'm not logged in here. And this is my YouTube channel, Social Studies Samurai. And here's the pre-unit formative quiz. But this teaches you, let me just go back here. I'm going to pause it because you don't need the thing. In fact, let me just click the share button, give you a shorter link. This will teach you how to create that Google Forms quiz that blocks things. Let me put that in there for you. Just make sure that got in. It's about an 11-minute video, but you can skip the beginning, skip the end. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. Shameless self-promotion. And I'll be putting other things up there. I've got some tutorials on Google Earth projects and 360-degree tour maps and stuff like that. So for teachers, hopefully it's going to be useful. All right, so some other activities you might want to think about. Choose your own adventure. Now, I didn't get a chance to put this together as a sample, but I recommend you go to YouTube. Google Forms. I am actually going to be trying this next week with my classes. I haven't done this before, but I've seen one look really good, and I thought, you know what, I can do that. So go to YouTube, type in Choose Your Own Adventure Google Forms, and then you're going to see some pop up. You can, yes, use Google Forms for Choose Your Own Adventure, as well as Google Slides. Check that out as well. Google Forms, Google Slides. Have students use computational thinking, because if students make their own Choose Your Own Adventure, they have to think about the path that the story is going to take. And you, if you make one as a teacher, you have to as well. Now, here's that using photos. Didn't get a chance to change my text up here, so folks. One activity is called a bio blitz. And basically, it works in the same way as uploading a file. So what students would do, oh, I haven't set this for myself. Sorry, I've got to go back and open a separate account. But basically, what happens is the students would have one question and it would say, and they could answer multiple times, right? It would say, explain what you think this, a BioBlitz, right? So we're looking at biodiversity. Walk around the school, take photos of the biodiversity at the school. And they might snap photos of insects or photos of trees and plants and things like that. So what they would do is just write a comment. They upload the photo from their form. Photos in Google Forms are really easy to upload. Audio and video, because they're so heavy as files, it takes more time. But think about a BioBlitz. Now let me go back to the legacy walk. And I think this one's also from my other account, but it gives you a better example. What is a legacy walk? So we had our grade 12 students at the beginning of the grade 12 year walk around the school, taking photos of examples of a legacy. What have other students left behind? And so all they had to do was snap a photo, add the file, and explain how it's a legacy. And the fun thing about that was, in homeroom class, we could get everyone together, and then we just went in Google Drive through all the slides and talked about how is this a legacy of past students. So we saw photos of things like microwave ovens. So the class of 2007 bought this really great microwave oven. It still works. The class of 2015, they bought that nice bench that's outside in the green area. The class of 2012, they got that mascot banner that's in the gymnasium. Great team building activity, great activity for grade 12 kids to think about in the next year. What do I want to do as a senior student? What do I want my legacy at my school to look like? And the BioBlitz is a lot of fun too. If kids are at home right now, I reckon, well, let's face it, 900 million kids are at home right now learning. For those that have access, okay, because not all of us have access, right? We're in a lucky situation. I know I am anyway. Get them to say, all right, when you're allowed to go out for a nature walk and snap photos of nature, examples of nature in your community. And then, get them to snap those photos. And then when you see the class, you can say, hey, everyone, let's look at all those photos that you took and uploaded to the Google form. So you can embed videos in Google Forms. So here's an example of one I've used with students. Great provocation. The North Sentinelese people can be learned about in this video that I put towards the end of the form. And why did I put it there? I normally would put it at the top. But again, students give their name, they give their class, and in the beginning, you're going to see a globe, pause the video, and then I get them, as they go through the video, to answer the questions. Basically, the North Sentinelese people are a tribal people that live the same way they did, honestly, 50,000 years ago. Nobody's allowed to go to the island. It's in the Andaman Sea, in the Indian Ocean. And it's just a fascinating story. So anyway, I used the video, and the students could respond to the form. And then we talked about the ethics of, should we bring civilization to the people? What are the problems with that? Then we got to chat about diseases and what happened to other indigenous people around the world after contact with Europeans, for example. But you can embed video in a Google form. Another good activity and great for flipped learning. Okay, now a voter ballot. Here's an example. I had my students do an election campaign simulation. This is last year's version. And so what I did was I sent Flipgrid videos. I've taken this out for this, but I put their election campaign commercial videos. So imagine your class. How can I use video? Students can make a video. You can upload it. The videos were only 1 minute each. And I sent this to schools around the world that I know. Last year, we had something like 500 students around the planet vote for their favorite political party. So they watched the video. You could simply link the videos here if you want. And then they voted for their favorite political party. They explained why they voted for them, and then click submit. My students were almost at this process for this year. And it's going to be a good conversation. It's like, okay, here's the winning party. That party was close. That party was close. Why is it? So why were these other parties less appealing, do you think? And then you can have a really good conversation about the whole process. And it's a really great way to end, our study of electoral systems and forms of government. Engaging stuff. So if you're using video, I recommend maybe use something easy to use like Flipgrid, and then attach it to a Google form where responses go to the Google form. They can respond in Flipgrid as well, but that's called app smashing, using 2 or more apps together for a common purpose. Other ideas: journal writing, reflecting on chapters in a book. I did that with a book called The Heart of the Samurai by Maggie Preuss. Fabulous book for teenagers. And, as we went through each section, the students would reflect on, the concepts and the ideas, and then we'd talk about it in class. You could do this for the research process. My students right now are doing a research assignment on a conflict in the world. So at the end of the whole process, when their video public service announcement, here's the conflict, here's, all about it, what we can do to help it, solve it, and what you should do. And then they're going to fill out the research process in a Google form. You can do current events and things like that as well. All of this is similar to journal writing, or it could be just a journaling, activity about how they're doing with the school year. Maybe take some of those questions from John Hattie about their attitudes to learning. How have your attitudes to learning changed since the end of quarter 1, or since the beginning of quarter 1, and that kind of thing. Now, I'm just going to quickly pull out a few things. Here are some different links to these. If you wanted to scroll through, you can find some other things. Here's that Choose Your Own Adventure. There's a link there for you. You can look at. This slide deck is very much a work in progress, so you can expect that it's going to be added to over the course of months coming. Now, if you want to go and build your own Google Forms and you're not sure, I'm quickly going to show you that here are some add-ons that you could learn about. Not going to get into that because we are getting to time here. And you can use these links to learn about Google Forms, but also I've got animated GIFs here where you can share this with your colleagues too. If they don't know how to use Google Forms, you can definitely make a copy of this slide deck and change and delete all the stuff that you don't need. Let's see, Glenn says, you'd like to try combining Flipgrid with Google Forms. Yep. Send me an email either at GEG Nagoya or gegnagoya@gmail.com, or nathangildart@gmail.com, or contact@socialstudiessamurai. I know, crazy, right? But anyway, here you can get the basics of how to create a Google form, and these are all animated GIFs to kind of walk you through how to do things. All right, and again, share with your colleagues if you want. So now I think we've kind of gone through a little bit of the overview at the beginning of how to create Google Forms. I've thrown in a link that teaches you how to create that form that forces students to do the keyword search. I am going to be creating some other Google Forms in the coming weeks. So if you want to go to socialstudiessamurai.com, then find the YouTube channel, and I will put not only the videos, but I'm going to put worksheets that you can use as well. Any text that you see in these things, I'll have that text so you can make your own form and don't have to copy and paste all that stuff. Just quickly, Glenn, yeah, will do. Please try that. Does all this stuff go in the drive? So yes, so expat newfies. Yeah, all this stuff can be in Google Drive. Now this presentation is a little bit disconnected because you can see that, let me just put this up here. Also a little bit disconnected because I've got several different places I'm putting things. I'm migrating everything from my school account, my private account, into my social studies account. But the EdTech video tutorials I'm making and the materials, they're focused around social studies, but the educational technology stuff are more like how to, and you can apply that to your own subject area as well as your own teaching context. So with your forms, everything goes in Google Drive. And I do have a plan for a Google Drive tutorial that teaches you how to go to, get this, from disaster to master. So keep an eye out for that as well. But yes, anything you make in Google Drive stays in Google Drive. You want to think about where you're going to, save things. Is it your school account or your private account? School account has more things, like more apps you can use, and you can always share it with yourself, and then you can download it later. But that's a whole other episode. In fact, I think we did Google Drive a number of episodes later, or earlier. So the YouTube Live, one of the earlier episodes, was on Google Drive. Have a look for that, and it'll tell you all about Google Drive in about 1 hour. Now, Richard says, I need some advice on a Google form that I have made. Yeah, Richard, why don't you pop the form in the chat, or if you want, send me an email. let me throw my email in the chat there, folks. It's plastered everywhere on the internet anyway. You can get us at GEG Nagoya. Of course, my private mail is always faster. And as we build our GEG Nagoya team, we're going to have more people using that GEG Nagoya email. So yeah, shoot me an email. And if you want any feedback on the Google form advice, then definitely, definitely I can give you some quick tips on that. If you've got quickly, you want to put it in now, then I'd love to address it. But having said that, I just want to point to two things. So remember that, and I know you can see my screen here, but let me come down to this deck. So we are GEG Nagoya. So find us at gegnagoya.com. We've got 7 more episodes once a month. We're going to be doing this, and we might add, a random episode here and there. June 3rd is the next one. We're going to be looking at Google Sheets. We're not going to go into too much detail. So, it should be one where you can kind of get an idea of how to, kind of format a Google Sheet to make it look good. And of course, we're going to start a Google for Education Certified Educator Study Group Level 1. If you want to be certified, very quickly, you will study on your own, and we will meet every 2 weeks or so, just online for an hour, to talk about what issues you encountered, questions you might have. It will be Japan Standard Time, and we will record the sessions so that people can come to them a little bit later. But it's always better if you're there, because you can basically get the questions you want asked answered right away. So keep your eyes out for that. So Richard, I'll check email, and I'll get back to you ASAP, as in like in the next 5 to 10 minutes. So everybody, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll like to see you next week. Stay in touch.